Hello everyone, good morning or night, it depends on the time you watch this video. Today our video is gonna be a detective riddles test game. So we'll watch a video together and see if I could solve it or no. But for detective games I'm not that good, so I think I won't do great, but I want to see how much you will solve with me. So anyway, let's get started.
All right, 8 detective riddles to test how awesome your logic skills are.
My logic skills are not that good.
Today, Brightside gives you the opportunity to feel like a real detective by
forget,
solving cases using just a few hints.
Yes, so don't forget to give the credit to Brightside channel for giving us the video or leaving it without any copyright, so thank you for that.
After each riddle, you will have 15 seconds to think it over. If you need more time to think, just pause the video. And if you crack at least one mystery, hit the like button. All right, Sherlock, here we go.
Yes, also don't forget to give this video a like. Okay.
Counting down from number 8, escape. Once a famous detective, Stevenson had to find an escaped prisoner. He knew the criminal was hiding in one of these houses, but he had to know the exact address so as to not frighten the criminal away. First, he took a photo of the houses with the help of a drone. When he looked at the photo, he realized where the criminal was. So, can you understand where that fugitive was and what helped the detective find him? You have 15 seconds. Your time has started.
Okay. I don't know which house. Maybe C. But why?
Are you ready to check your guesses?
Before you say anything, I want to say why I said C, because B and C, it's coming from the street and then entering the house, while A is it looks like the owner of the house. Yes, so I think it's B or C. I don't know which
Murderer was in house A.
My God.
You see, the car standing nearby was the only car parked facing the road. It would let the criminal escape quickly.
Okay. I think that the reason that he's not his I told you, my logic skills is not that good.
Number 7. Detective's tragedy. One morning, the detective had an argument with his wife and went away without his cell phone and the keys. In the evening, when he returned home, he found his colleague, his scared wife, and a murdered man. Stephen's wife told her story. I was sitting in the living room when I heard the doorbell. I thought it was my husband and opened the door, but a criminal pushed me, and so I stabbed him with a knife. The detective ordered the policeman to arrest his wife because she had planned to kill him. How did the detective figure it out? Time to rack your brain.
Why? Maybe because she was prepared with the knife?
Unfortunately, Mrs. Stevens indeed planned to kill her husband. She went to open the door with a knife because she thought it was her husband.
She was holding the knife already. Okay, I think I got a
Number
half
6,
point or a point.
Friendly murder. Mary and Ben lived with their 4 friends. One day, Ben came home and found Mary dead on a sofa. Bummer. He called the police. The detective arrived and realized that Mary had been killed not so long ago. He interrogated all four friends. That's what their stories told. Mia was in the kitchen and said she'd come home 2 hours ago and gone to the kitchen. John was reading a book in the garden. He said he hadn't left the place that day. Jennifer said she had been swimming in a swimming pool for 3 hours. Jane was painting in her room. Unexpectedly, the detective asked everyone to show him their hands and found out who lied to him immediately. That person was the murderer. How did Stevens uncover the criminal? Time is ticking away. Tick-tock. Who do you think the detective was checking?
Maybe John, because he was in the garden and his hand is clean. I know he was holding the book, but
Well, time is out. Here's the answer. Pay attention to the hands of Jennifer. If she had been swimming in the pool for so long, the skin on her palms would have been wrinkled. Oh, Jennifer, your pruny hands gave you away.
I thought it was a mistake and they can't make it like a real
Number
hand.
5. Blood ties.
Okay, I think it's a mistake from them, not from me.
A millionaire
their,
was shot in the forehead at his own home.
In their
Detective
drawing.
Stevens spoke to the millionaire's 3 sons, Jack, John, and James, who were at home. Jack said that night, John, their father, let me guess, the wife's name is Jane, I'll bet. Anyway, the father had been at an official reception. They arrived home and entered the living room. His father came in first, then John and Jack himself. When their father came up to the stairs, James entered the living room and shot their father. John confirmed Jack's information. James said he had visited his friends that night. When he arrived home, his father had already been dead. The detective understood everything immediately. So, who was the killer, and how did Stevens resolve that case? What do you think?
I think I need to rewind it again. A millionaire was shot in the forehead at his own home. Detective Stevens spoke to the millionaire's 3 sons, Jack, John, and James, who were at home.
Jack said that night, John, their father, let me guess, the wife's name is Jane, I'll bet. Anyway, the father had been at an official reception. They arrived home and entered the living room. His father came in first, then John and Jack himself.
Okay, Jack said that night John, their father had been at the official reception. They arrived home and entered the living room. Reception. They arrived home and entered the living room. His father came in first, then John and Jack himself.
When their father came up to the stairs, James entered the living room and shot their father. John confirmed Jack's information. James said he had visited his friends that night. When he arrived home, his father had already been dead.
I rewinded and still I had no clue.
The detective understood everything immediately. So, who was the killer, and how did Stevens resolve that case?
Jack,
what do you think?
James, and James. Jack, John, and James. Jack, John, and James. And why?
The word of one brother against 2 others. A tricky case. Or have you already figured out what happened?
Maybe Jane?
Let's check if you are right.
Jane, the wife?
John and Jack lied. If James had killed their father, a bullet would have shot him in the nape because he wanted to go upstairs. However, the wound was on his forehead. All right, I was thinking it was Jane, but no.
I also was having a suspicion on John and Jack as 2 because they are brothers. How they will stand in front or in the face of their each other, and they will say that the third brother is the responsible. That's why I suspect on both of them. But as it said, it's tricky. I thought it will be Jane, but the wound and that
Number
stuff I
4.
didn't think about it.
Romantic journey. Mr. and Mrs. Clyde went on a trip to the mountains, but 2 days later, Mr. Clyde returned home alone. He went to the police and said that Mrs. Clyde had fallen to her death. The next day, Detective Stevens visited Mr. Clyde and arrested him for his wife's murder. Clyde confessed his guilt and asked the detective how he found out he was the murderer. Stevens said he simply called a travel agent and asked for some information. What did the travel agent say to the detective?
I think because he just
What is your version? Did it
Tooth.
have anything to do with the insurance, perhaps? You have
Tooth.
just a few seconds left.
Give me time to talk. Maybe because he booked just 2 tickets for the mountains, and he didn't book another 2 tickets for the returning from the mountains. That's why the detective arrested him, because he was having the like intention to murder his wife. So that's my logic or my sentence for this case.
Do you know the answer? The words of the travel agent shed light on the whole situation. Mr. Clyde bought 2 plane tickets to the mountains and only 1 return ticket. Ah, if only Mrs. Clyde had known. Eh?
Okay. No one said about the return ticket. I am also an idiot that I said 2 tickets. He used the 2 tickets to get for the mountains. That's why he called the agent so he can confirm what he did, and only 1 return ticket.
Blame the Beatles. She didn't have a ticket to ride.
Small mistake, arrest him.
Number 3.
Liar.
Liar. A man told the police that he had come home from work to find his wife's dead body lying in the middle of the parlor. He said she had apparently found his gun in his desk and shot herself.
What?
However,
Suicide?
the policeman knew at once that the man was lying. How did he know? 15 seconds is all you have to solve this mystery.
I think he killed her, he murdered her, and put the gun on her hands.
The policeman noticed that the man had an empty gun holster attached to his belt. It meant he'd either been about to take the gun with him or had it on him all along. The former couldn't be true because he said he'd come home from work and found his wife dead. That's why we are left with the latter. Not the latter, the latter, which proves that the man had actually shot his wife.
Murdered his wife, and he put the gun on her hand to be in like a suicide.
Number 2. Silly murderer.
Okay.
The detective was speaking to a doctor in a waiting room when a dismayed man rushed in and screamed, "Somebody shot my wife!" The detective asked the man to tell him everything. The man, Mr. Clark, said that he was at work when his housekeeper called him and said that something terrible had happened to his wife and that she was in the intensive care unit. He hung up immediately and went to the hospital. When Mr. Clark finished his story, the detective arrested him on the attempted murder charge. Why did he do this?
Because he said it was in the house, and then suddenly he continued that.
Can the detective read minds?
Then he said, he continued saying that his wife was in the IC unit, So how come that the IC unit in his home? Of course it should be in the hospital, but why he said in the home? So there was a trick on and manipulation for the detective to be to be innocent in front of him, because every murder think that if he call the police, that means he will be not in the suspicious of for the police. I this is my words for this case. Let's check.
Your opinion. You have just a few seconds
Well, this my
left to make
opinion,
your
yes.
guess. In fact, Mr. Clark didn't know anything about a shot. His housekeeper only said that something bad had happened to his wife. No firearm had been mentioned. By the way, are you also keeping count of how many couples are killing their spouses?
Yes, I noticed that. Okay. Forget all what I had said. Only said that something bad had happened to his wife. But how the detective
So
know?
much spousicide. What does this say about our society? Well, firstly, the killers all screw it up, but I digress. Finally, number 1, the murder of an aristocrat. George Smith was murdered on Sunday evening. There were 5 other people in his house. Mr. Smith's wife, I'm betting she did it, his personal cook, a butler, a housemaid, and a gardener. They all told Detective Stevens what they were doing that evening. Mrs. Smith was reading a book near a fireplace. The cook was making breakfast. The butler was giving instructions to workers in the living room. The housemaid was washing the dishes. The gardener was watering plants in the greenhouse. Right after all the conversations, the detective arrested the murderer.
Yes, I know it without any seconds. Because we should focus on each detail. And here detail, it was Sunday evening. The cook was cooking a breakfast. So the cook is the murderer, and the detective arrested the cook.
Who was the killer? And how did Stevens find the criminal?
He is the cook.
Will you be able to solve this riddle in 15 seconds?
I
If you
solved
want
it
more time
before
to
we
consider
start
this case, you
15
can always
seconds.
pause the video.
That's the cook. The butler was doing his job simply, housemaid, the gardener, the wife, all there true. But the liar, he was the cook.
Well, what is your answer?
The cook?
The criminal
Yes.
was the cook. Of course he was, I knew that all the time.
Yes, I
The
knew it
murder
all
was
the time.
committed in the evening, but he said he was making
Eating
breakfast.
yes.
He had to pay more attention to what he was saying. You know what I think? Mrs. Smith paid the gardener to kill her husband because he
What?
was having an affair with a housemaid. It all fits. So let's wrap this up.
What?
How many riddles have you solved, and which one seemed the trickiest?
Okay, they were surprised, and all of them were tricky, and I know I solved nothing, just the last one. It was the easiest for me. I pay attention on it, but the before it was like harder, and I didn't know what to do. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, support this video with a like and share it among your friends, and subscribe if you are a new subscriber, and see you in the next time. Goodbye.